I wasn't even sure if I wanted to talk about this today because it feels so run-of-the-mill at this point. Like, of course they're not following typical protocol to protect sensitive information. Of course they're not following the rules. Of course they care more about convenience and moving fast and breaking things than about official procedures that are put in place for a reason. The point of this entire administration is that the rules do not apply to them. They're willing to do anything and say anything to gain more power and control, unconcerned with who gets hurt in the process. And so now that they've been caught in the act and it's fucking embarrassing, they're doing everything they can to lie, to obfuscate, to downplay what happened, and most recently, to turn the blame around and place it on the shoulders of the journalist they inadvertently added to a highly sensitive national security discussion. Trump dismissed The Atlantic as, quote, going out of business and has called Jeffrey Goldberg a sleazebag. Hegseth called him a, quote, deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist. Mike Waltz, the guy who accidentally added him to the chat in the first place, called Goldberg a loser who likely deliberately tricked someone into giving him access to the chat, which, like, that someone was you, Mike, so I'm unclear how you don't know how this happened. And so I think the real story in this entire debacle, because you know these high-level officials won't face any actual punishment for their mistake, you know Trump and his cronies will continue to lie about it and rewrite what happened forever, you know that no real change is going to come about as to how the Trump regime handles national security information. The real story, in my opinion, is that this redirection of the blame from the intelligence officials onto the journalist is a convenient consequence of Trump's decade-long push to discredit the media. The rampant spread of disinformation, the distrust of mainstream media, honestly on both sides of the aisle, means that when a reporter drops a bombshell like this, or even more heinous revelations that I'm sure will come in the future, Trump and his supporters can turn around and weaponize that distrust in the media that they've been cultivating. They can say, this guy's a journalist. You know how journalists are. They're willing to say anything to get attention and ad dollars. Don't trust him. He's lying. He's playing up a non-story to try to get clicks. He is desperate and pathetic. I'm the one you can trust. A great example of this rhetoric can be found in a social media post by White House Communications Director Stephen Chung, who commented on the Signal leak by saying, quote, at every turn, anti-Trump forces have tried to weaponize innocuous actions and turn them into faux outrage that fake news outlets can use to peddle misinformation. Don't let enemies of America get away with these lies. Which is truly written the way I imagine some poorly written screenplay would write clearly fascist propaganda. Like, it's so obviously batshit, it boggles the mind, the amount of brain rot someone would have to actually buy this. And yet, this all-out propaganda campaign to vilify journalists allows at least the half of the electorate that still trusts Trump to be lulled into a false sense that maybe things aren't so bad. Maybe every bad story that comes out about this administration is just being played up for clicks. Actually, yeah, everything is totally normal. I need to just ignore the reports and trust that Daddy Trump knows best. This, in turn, completely undermines the role that the media is meant to play in any robust democracy, that of watchdog. Watergate would never have been uncovered but for the work of journalists. Countless governmental missteps would have gone unnoticed because journalists are the only ones with the time, like it's literally their job, to keep an eye on things while the rest of us toil away under capitalism. This is a crucial role, and while I think it's totally fine and dandy to have open debate and discussion about the articles being printed by our mainstream media, about the way they frame things, about what sorts of biases they may or may not have, that doesn't mean they aren't still guided by professional ethics and levels of editing and fact-checking that make them an essential source of truth and oversight when it comes to politics and government. And that is really inconvenient when you're Trump or the people behind him pulling the strings, and you want to do things under cover of darkness where no one can sound the alarm that what you're doing is not normal or is flat out illegal. We would be none the wiser but for the work of journalists, and Trump knows that. So the media will always be the enemy, and cracking down on them and forcing loyalty from media owners like Jeff Bezos is what he does to ensure his tactics and actions aren't called out for what they are. So to me, turning this story onto Jeffrey Goldberg's shoulders is just the latest in his long history of tactics he's used to crack down on journalists, and I think we're just seeing the beginning of it.